Hi everyone. I'm very happy to share my project with you. I would like to explore the topic of global COVID-19. I know there are lots of people having already worked on the COVID-19 datasets, but during the pandemic period, you could never do too much analysis and too much attention on the COVID-19 situation. In my project, there are two main goals. The first one is to build a synchronous dashboard to analyze the severity of COVID-19 globally and locally. Locally, here I mean in the US. The second goal is to explore further with a story on the research question, what factors affect the severity of COVID-19 globally. Let me first introduce the dataset I utilized for my dashboard. It is from the Data Vault website. They provide a Tableau web data connector, so I could refresh it automatically every day. Also, when I upload my project to the Tableau online, I could set a regular time to let the system upload the data automatically. It's very convenient. However, there is a drawback. It takes a little longer time for me to shift from the data source page to this dashboard. So bear me, I would use my Tableau online versions data source to introduce the variables included in the dataset. As you could see here, there are mainly two types of variables here. The first type is the geographic variables, including the regions or continent, countries, province, state, county, even the county flips number. I know it's numeric, but it also shows the geographic values I want to know. The second type of variables are the numeric variables about the severity of the COVID-19, like the positive cases, death cases. And I just utilized several variables in my dashboard. So let's go to my dashboard and I will introduce more details. As you could see from this corner, here is the total cases in the whole world. At the specific day, we could pick the date here, and in the global map, you could tell the severity by country from the size and the darkness of the red color. From the right side, you could see the top 30 countries with the most positive cases. The number above each bar is their rank. You also could find the specific details when you hover on the state. Next, let's move on to the US map. From this map, you could also tell the severity of each state. When you hover over each state, such as Texas, which is the state I stay in, you could find which county has the most largest number, and also you could find the total positive cases in this state on the specific date. On the right side, you could find the rank of all the states in the US by their positive cases on that day. That's it. It's a very simple dashboard to show you the latest situation and the severity of the countries and the states in the US. So next, let's move on to my story. I will explore further about the COVID-19 thing. Before I dig into the story, let me briefly introduce the three datasets I choose for the story. The first one is from Our World in Data. It's a very complex dataset containing lots of variables about the COVID-19 severity, about the economic factors that can have seen. The second dataset is about the measures adopted by government during the pandemic. The third dataset provides the values of the country based on their democracy level. Here, -10 represents total autocracy, +10 represents total democracy. I built the relationship between these three datasets according to their common variables. Next, let's go to my story. Around the research question, what factors affect the severity of COVID-19? I suppose that demographic and economic factors, vaccination rate, government measures, and regime tab might have an effect on the COVID-19 severity. I want to mention that since there is positive relationship between the total cases and the total deaths, I will use either of them to measure the COVID-19 severity instead of using both of them in the story. Let's first look at the left side. We could tell that the population density, elder people percentage are positively related to the COVID-19 severity. And from the right side, there is also positive tendency. You might wonder why the country with higher level GDP per capita have higher total cases. It might be because their regime tab, since the Western developed countries don't have enough that strong government power to push the people follow their policies, so they could not prevent this kind of thing happen. Then let's go to the vaccination. From the map, you could tell the level of the vaccination ratio by country. So you might wonder, is it positively related to the total cases or negatively? But from the right side, I could not make an obvious conclusion, since you could see that some country with relatively higher vaccination rate still have a higher level of COVID-19 cases. But I want to dig in depth by region, so I make this filter. When I just pick one region like Asia or the Europe, I could tell that as the vaccination rate increases, it seems the total cases or total deaths will decrease. So I think it might tell us that the vaccination works at some regions, but not all of them. Also, I made these time series trend lines. I would like to say that as the vaccination rate increase rapidly, that it seems that the total cases and the total deaths has been decreased a little bit. So I think vaccination makes a positive effect on the government's prevention of COVID-19. Next, I will introduce the different categories of government measures. There are mainly 6 categories, including social distancing, movement restrictions, public health measures, government and social measures, humanitarian exemptions, and lockdown. From the map and also from the stacked bar chart, we could tell that Europe applies the most measures, then followed by Americas, Africa, Asia. Also, from the color and the area, we could tell that the social distancing measures and public health measures occupy the most percent of all measures. When we click the specific category, we could tell their distribution around the world. But from the line chart on the right side, we could see there is a weird phenomenon, since when there are more measures adopted in the region, there will be higher level of total cases. So I don't want to jump to the conclusion that the government measures doesn't work, but I want to mention that it has a positive effect on the vaccination rate. I guess that when government applies lots of measures, it represents the government pay a lot of attention to the prevention of COVID-19. So the people will also be promoted to get the vaccination. Also, here is a table showing the accurate values, but I will not introduce in details here. I want to mention the regime tab here. Regime tab has a very interesting relationship with the COVID-19 severity. As you could see here, it follows the V shape. So the most autocratic regimes and the most democratic regimes have the largest total cases. It is hard. It is hard to understand, but I guess it's because the countries located here, they might have less population density or the other kind of matters, factors or variables, the latent variables that hide the deep relationship between the regime type and the severity of COVID-19. Here comes the conclusion. From the table on the left side, we could tell all the variables might make a point according to the relatively high R-squares. But according to the specific coefficient of each variable, we could see, except for the hospital beds per thousand, all the other variables don't have an obvious relationship with the COVID-19 severity. But don't be upset. I want to mention that OLS regression models could not tell all the relationship between the data. That's why we need visualization. From the story, we could make some conclusions on the right side. So we could tell there is an obvious positive relationship between the demographic factors and the COVID-19 severity. Also, we could tell there are some complex relationship between the other factors and the COVID-19, such as firstly, the economic factors have a positive relationship with the COVID-19 severity. It does not mean that the well-developed country might have or definitely have higher cases. It might be because their regime type, more freedom, more cases, you know. Secondly, vaccination rate might have an effect to help to reduce the COVID-19 severity, but it's not obvious. And thirdly, the government measures could help to promote people to get them vaccinated, but it don't have a definite positive or negative relationship with the COVID-19 severity. Fourthly, the relationship between regime type and COVID-19 severity follows a V shape. So that's all. Thanks a lot for your time, and I hope you have learned something new or interesting from my project.